Tom stood in our Palm Springs living room, his suitcase by the door, a smug smile on his face as he said the words that shattered 25 years in a single breath. "Stop being so dramatic, Kathleen. You knew this was coming. I'm leaving tonight. Jessica and I are staying at the Grand Vista until we find our place." I sat frozen, clutching the photo album I'd spent weeks creating, each page a carefully arranged memory of our life together. He flipped through it carelessly, mocking me. 25 years, boiled down to a pathetic little scrapbook, he scoffed. What Tom didn't know was that hidden between those pages was something far more valuable than photos or sentiment. My name is Kathleen Wilson. I'm 50, a wife of 25 years, and until tonight I thought my marriage was broken but salvageable. Turns out, it was already over. And what Tom didn't know was, I wasn't broken. I was ready. Stay with me to see how a photo album, a lottery ticket, and a carefully kept secret rewrote the end of my story and the beginning of his downfall. Kathleen Wilson met Tom during her sophomore year at UCLA. She was studying creative arts, full of ideas, ambition, and dreams of opening her own gallery one day. Tom was a finance major, confident and driven, with a sharp mind and an even sharper tongue. He made her laugh, made her feel seen. They fell fast and hard, the kind of love that seems destined for forever. By graduation, they were engaged. Within a year, married. At first, Kathleen tried to balance her artistic aspirations with married life, but when Tom landed a high-powered job at a financial firm in Los Angeles, things shifted. She suggested she focus on the home. "You'll have time to paint," he said. "We don't need two careers in this marriage." So she let go of hers. Kathleen gave up job offers, gallery internships, and the independence she once prized. In return, she raised their 2 children, hosted dinners for Tom's clients, and managed every inch of their household. From budgeting groceries to managing contractors for their ever-expanding home renovations, she became the silent engine behind Tom's public success. She made their house beautiful, made holidays unforgettable, made sure their lives ran without a hitch. But as the years passed, the sacrifices she made became invisible to him. As the kids grew older and eventually left for college, Kathleen found herself alone more often. Tom was constantly at work or on business trips. She started noticing things: a shift in tone, increased criticism, his growing impatience with her questions. When she brought up finances, he waved her off. "You don't need to worry about that." But the credit card bills arrived thicker. The mortgage was mysteriously refinanced, and a second home in Arizona she hadn't agreed to appeared under both their names. She asked. He deflected. She asked again. He got angry. Still, she held on. For their 25th anniversary, Kathleen decided to create something special. She poured weeks into designing a photo album chronicling their life wedding photos, family vacations, handwritten captions capturing moments only they understood. She made a dinner reservation at Lorenzo, their favorite restaurant, and even wore the emerald green dress Tom once said made her look timeless. In her heart, she hoped it might reignite something, anything. She clung to the belief that perhaps they were just in a rut, that 25 years of partnership could be saved with a little effort, a little memory, a little grace. But deep down, she knew something was wrong. Tom had become a stranger in their home. He kept his phone face down, changed his passwords, and was always too tired to talk. The affection was gone, replaced by coldness, wrapped in condescension. Still, she planned that night, the photo album, the dinner, a last-ditch effort to bring them back together. What she didn't expect was that Tom had already decided they were over and planned to break the news with the cruelty of someone who had rewritten history in his own favor. But what he never saw coming was that Kathleen had quietly rewritten her own future. One he wasn't part of. One she had prepared for in secret. And on the night he tried to erase her, she was ready to erase him right back. Kathleen sat on the edge of the couch, her hands lightly resting on the photo album she'd spent weeks creating. Each page was a labor of love, carefully selected photos, handwritten captions, pressed flowers from their anniversary trip to Italy. But Tom didn't even pretend to care. He stood across from her, flipping through the album with disinterest, bending corners and smudging fingerprints across the glossy memories. "Stop being so dramatic, Kathleen," he said, his voice flat. "You knew this was coming." She didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, she studied his face, his complete lack of empathy, the smug curve of his mouth. His suitcase was already by the door, packed and waiting. The realization that this wasn't spontaneous hit her hard. He'd planned this. He dropped the album onto the coffee table with a dull thud. "I mean, look at this. 25 years reduced to a photo scrapbook. Really? It's pathetic." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't flinch. Tom mistook her silence for weakness. "I've been seeing Jessica," he continued casually. 8 months now. She's young, ambitious, everything you used to be." He walked to the window, adjusting the cuffs of his shirt with the same carelessness he once reserved for brushing crumbs off his plate. "We'll be at the Grand Vista for a while, until we find something more permanent. I'll have my lawyer reach out. Let's not make this mess." Kathleen stood slowly, smoothing the emerald green dress he'd always hated. "On our anniversary," she said softly, almost more to herself than him. "Come on," Tom scoffed. "You didn't really think we were going to celebrate, did you? The dinner reservation at Lorenzo? This album? It's desperate, Kathleen. You're desperate." He reached for the album again, but Kathleen pulled it gently from his grasp. Her fingers traced the spine with a kind of reverence he'd long stopped understanding. "You're right about one thing," she said, her voice calm. "This evening isn't going the way I planned." Tom looked confused, but only briefly. He was already turning toward the door, eager to leave. Kathleen remained still. The album felt heavier now, not because of the photos, but because of what lay hidden within its pages. Tucked between snapshots of their Hawaiian vacation and their daughter's high school graduation were sealed documents, copies of financial records, meeting notes, and one very important letter from the California State Lottery Commission. She had discovered Tom's affair months ago, but she hadn't reacted, not then. Instead, she'd waited. 1 week ago, in the quiet of their kitchen at 3 a.m., Kathleen had checked her numbers again and again under dim lighting, afraid to believe it. 6 numbers, a $98 million 0 cents, all in her name. The lottery ticket changed everything. Tom thought he was walking out of their marriage with the upper hand. What he didn't know was that Kathleen had already walked away, emotionally, mentally, and financially. She just hadn't told him yet. But she would, soon. Very soon. 1 week earlier, Kathleen sat at the kitchen table in her Palm Springs home, clutching a worn lottery ticket between her fingers. It was 3:12 a.m. The house was dark and silent, except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. The only light came from her phone screen, glowing with the official California State Lottery website. 6 numbers. She read them once, twice, then a third time. Each time her heart pounded louder in her chest. There was no mistake. She had just won $98 million. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply sat there, stunned, her mind racing. The first person she called wasn't Tom. It was Eleanor Wilson, a financial advisor with a sterling reputation and a client list that included some of the most powerful women in. By noon that day, Kathleen was in Eleanor's office. Together they built a fortress and an irrevocable trust, with Kathleen as sole beneficiary. The money would be protected by multiple layers of legal security. No one, not even a soon-to-be ex-husband, could touch it. Over the next 3 days, Kathleen met with estate planners, tax attorneys, and asset protection specialists. Every step was taken with precision, every dollar accounted for, and all of it done under Tom's nose while he was busy planning his new life with Jessica. Eleanor made one thing clear. If Tom found out too early, he could try to delay the divorce proceedings, or worse, try to stake a fraudulent claim. So Kathleen played her role, quiet, subdued, unassuming. She let Tom believe she was the same woman he'd underestimated for years. In reality, she was preparing for war. At home, Kathleen started assembling a photo album for their 25th anniversary. But unlike years past, this one wasn't about nostalgia. Between the pages, she tucked folded legal documents, the confirmation from the Lottery Commission, the notarized trust paperwork, account numbers, and, most crucial, proof of Tom's financial misconduct. Over the years, she had quietly collected evidence. Suspicious credit card statements, sudden withdrawals from their joint accounts, paperwork showing 2 mortgages she never signed for. At the time, she hadn't known what to do with it all. But now, it had a purpose. She chose the album carefully, an old leather book with thick pages and hidden folds, perfect for concealing papers. With every photo she inserted, she slipped in one more piece of the puzzle. A trip to Hawaii hid the trust document. A Thanksgiving photo concealed a letter from her lawyer. Their daughter's graduation covered a bank statement showing a 6-figure withdrawal linked to Tom's side business. By the time the album was finished, it was more than a keepsake. It was a weapon, one she'd use the moment Tom thought he'd won. Kathleen didn't feel afraid anymore. She felt ready to protect her future, ready to expose the man who had lied, cheated, and stolen from her. And when the time came, she would do it on her terms, with grace, precision, and unshakable resolve. Tom's smirk lingered as he moved toward the door, suitcase in hand. Kathleen sat on the edge of the couch, photo album resting on her lap like a final offering. But she wasn't done. Not yet. Not even close. "Before you go," she said calmly, opening the album, "there's something you should see." Tom rolled his eyes, impatient. "If it's another sentimental speech, spare me. Jessica's waiting." "Speeches," she replied, sliding a crisp document from between 2 pages. The one showing their Hawaiian vacation. The last trip where Tom had pretended to answer work emails while secretly texting his intern. He squinted at the letterhead, his brow furrowing. "California State Lottery Commission." His voice faltered. He took a step closer, reading the bold black numbers and the official seal. "I won $98 million, Kathleen said evenly. "Last week." Tom froze. "Packed all in a car and left with his twin brother." $60 million, she continued. "And it's mine, Tom. Every cent. Secured before you served me this little performance tonight. According to California law, it's considered separate property." His suitcase thudded to the floor. "You're lying," he whispered, but his eyes didn't leave the page. His fingers twitched toward it, but Kathleen pulled it back, placing the letter neatly beside her. "I met with lawyers, financial advisors, a team of specialists," she said. "Everything was set before you opened your mouth about Jessica. You don't get a cent." His smirk had vanished, replaced by a slack-jawed stare. "Kathleen, let's talk. We've been married 25 years. That has to count for something." "Oh, it does," she replied, standing slowly. "It counts for the gambling debt you hid from me, the 2 mortgages you took out without my consent, the joint savings you drained to buy Jessica that diamond bracelet." Tom blinked. "You knew." "I've known for months. I just didn't let you know I knew." His phone buzzed again. Kathleen glanced at the screen. "Jessica." "She's wondering where you are," she said. "You've got an investor dinner tonight, don't you? At that new seafood place her dad likes?" Tom swallowed hard, suddenly pale. "How do you know about that?" Kathleen gave a small, cold smile. "Because I've had time, Tom. While you were sneaking around, I was documenting. Quietly. Thoroughly. I know about the embezzled funds you've been funneling into your shell company. I know Jessica's father was going to invest, assuming everything looked stable." He took a step back, stammering, "You don't understand. That's business. That's separate." "It's not separate when you used our company's assets to fund it, or when you used my name on the filings." Another buzz. Jessica again. Her message preview was visible. What's going on? Dad's asking questions. He's ready to leave? Kathleen let the silence stretch as Tom fumbled for words. You can't do this to me, he whispered. You can't just cut me off. I've built a life. No, Tom, she interrupted. You built a fantasy, one you financed with lies, and now that fantasy is over. She lifted the album slightly, as if offering it one last time. This was never just a collection of memories. It was a timeline of your mistakes, and my proof. Tom's eyes flickered with something unfamiliar. Fear. What are you going to do? Kathleen didn't answer directly. Instead, she turned toward the window, looking out at the desert skyline. I'm going to finish what I started, and you're going to find out just how expensive the truth can be. Tom stood stiff, the color draining from his face as Kathleen slid another document from the album. This one bearing the company letterhead and rows of transaction records. She handed it to him with deliberate calm. Recognize these? She asked softly. They're transfers you authorized. Repeated withdrawals from the firm's discretionary budget into your private holding account. Amanda from accounting flagged them months ago. His lips parted, but no sound came out. His hands shook slightly as he scanned the numbers. She tried to raise it with you, Kathleen continued. You brushed her off, said she was confused. She wasn't. She saved everything, and when I came to her with questions, she gave me everything. Emails, approval chains, flagged audits. You didn't cover your tracks, Tom. You just assumed no one was watching. Tom opened his mouth again, panic growing. Kathleen, wait. This is a misunderstanding. That account, those were authorized. She cut him off. Don't bother. The board is meeting first thing tomorrow morning. They already have this file, and they've contacted the authorities. His phone buzzed again, and his eyes flickered toward it, but he didn't dare look. Jessica was still waiting downstairs, clueless that her executive genius boyfriend had just lit his entire career on fire. Kathleen gave him a pointed look. Still planning that investor dinner? Justin's pap was in it. You were counting on him to bankroll your new startup. You were going to wow him tonight with your pitch. Tom's jaw clenched. It was going to work if you hadn't... If I hadn't what? Protected myself? Caught you stealing? Exposed you before you took down the whole company? She pulled out one more page and placed it gently in front of him. It was a printed screenshot of his text messages with Michael Anderson, the man who'd helped set up the shell company he was using to hide the embezzled funds. One particular line stood out in bold highlight. Jessica's just a useful idiot. She'll smile and sign anything if I tell her it's for us. Tom's voice cracked. Where did you get this? Michael flipped, Kathleen replied. He's been talking to the FBI for 3 days. He gave them everything, including your plan to pin the financial setup on him if the scheme fell apart. Tom staggered backward, bumping into the coffee table. That's not true. Michael would never... I did, Kathleen said, because they showed him your messages, the same ones I backed up. You were planning to let him take the fall, just like you were planning to milk Jessica's father for seed money before vanishing into your offshore accounts. You always had an exit plan, except now, the exit door is a prison cell. There was a knock at the door. Firm, rhythmic. Tom's eyes went wide. No, you didn't. Kathleen didn't answer. She walked calmly across the room as the knock came again, louder this time. Please, Tom said, voice shaking. Kathleen, we can work this out. I'll sign whatever you want. I'll walk away from the company. I'll give you everything. Don't do this. She paused by the door, one hand resting on the knob. You don't get to beg now, Tom. You had years to be decent. You chose deception. You marked my worth. You lied, cheated, and stole. And now you're scared because you finally met someone who didn't stay silent. He reached toward her, but she stepped back. "You planned everything," he said bitterly. "The album, the dinner, this whole night." Kathleen looked him square in the eye. "No. The lottery was luck, but this moment, this justice, I built it. Carefully, legally. And I'm not sorry." Another knock, this one accompanied by a voice. "Mr. Thomas Wilson, Palm Springs PD. Open up." Tom backed away, breathing hard. Kathleen turned the knob, opened the door, and stepped aside. "Detective Harrison? He's inside. I believe you'll find his phone especially interesting. He was just about to delete some messages." The officers entered. Tom didn't resist. He couldn't. As the handcuffs clicked into place, he looked at Kathleen one last time. "You've ruined everything." She met his gaze, steady and clear. "No, Tom. You did that all by yourself." The moment the front door closed behind the officers escorting Tom away, Kathleen felt a strange quiet settle over the house. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was the beginning of something cleaner. The echo of his protests, his desperate bargaining, the lies he'd built his life upon, all of it was finally silenced. News of Tom's arrest spread quickly. By the next morning, local media outlets had picked up the story. Respected financial executive Thomas Wilson, arrested in connection with corporate fraud and embezzlement. It wasn't long before national attention followed. Reporters camped outside the company's headquarters. Investigations expanded, and although the story was hot for a week, it eventually faded into the backdrop of an already scandal-saturated news cycle. But while the media's interest waned, the consequences did not. Jessica vanished almost overnight. One day, she was a wide-eyed intern, living in a fantasy of champagne boardrooms and luxury apartments. The next, she was gone. Her social media accounts were deleted. Her name never appeared in the corporate filings again. Quietly, discreetly, she packed what little dignity she had left and disappeared from Palm Springs entirely. Tom, however, had no such exit. Faced with overwhelming evidence, emails, bank records, witness testimony, he took a plea deal. In exchange for full cooperation and testimony against several co-conspirators, including Michael Anderson, he avoided a 20-year sentence. Instead, he was given 8 years in a federal prison. 8 years stripped of power, privilege, and prestige. 8 years where he couldn't manipulate his way out of consequences. Kathleen's name was mentioned briefly in several reports, not as a jilted wife, but as a whistleblower, someone who had provided key information that helped uncover a broader web of financial deception. Some journalists wanted to interview her. She declined. She had no interest in headlines. Her victory didn't need a spotlight. It was personal. Weeks after his sentencing, a letter arrived. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was from Tom. Kathleen sat at her kitchen table and stared at the envelope for a long time. She didn't need to open it to know what was inside. Apologies, excuses, manipulative nostalgia. Maybe even a desperate offer to start over when he got out. His patterns were predictable. He'd always seen her as something he could mold until she became someone he couldn't control. She dropped the envelope into the shredder and turned it on without a second thought. Her world, once small and suffocating, had expanded. Invitations started arriving, from nonprofits, business groups, women's organizations. Not because she was wealthy, but because she had become something else entirely, a symbol of quiet resilience, of calculated strength. The woman once described as Tom Wilson's wife was now known by her own name, Kathleen Wilson. Her reputation grew, built not on drama, but on dignity. She never spoke publicly about Tom. She didn't need to. His downfall was self-inflicted. His story ended in disgrace. Hers had only just begun. She'd once feared being alone. Now, she realized, she was finally free. And freedom, she learned, was far more powerful than revenge. 1 year after Tom's arrest, Kathleen sat on the deck of her Malibu beach house, the rhythmic crash of waves soothing her in a way nothing else ever had. The sun dipped low over the Pacific, painting the sky in golds and soft lavender. It wasn't just a new home, it was a new beginning. A life that was hers alone, no longer tethered to lies or compromise. But Kathleen hadn't just walked away from her old life, she'd built something new, something meaningful. With the help of Eleanor Wilson and her trusted legal team, she launched a foundation dedicated to supporting women who had experienced financial abuse. It wasn't just about handing out money, it was about giving women the tools to escape, rebuild, and thrive. Financial literacy workshops, legal aid referrals, emergency housing stipends, and long-term mentorship programs, all run with the care and precision Kathleen had once poured into her household. For the first time in decades, she felt truly fulfilled. She began speaking at events, quietly at first, then with growing confidence. Her story wasn't just about betrayal or revenge. It was about transformation. Women came up to her after her talks, some with tears in their eyes, thanking her for showing that it was possible to start over, no matter how deep the deception or how long the marriage. She never flaunted her wealth. That was never the point. The lottery gave her independence, but it was this mission, this work, that gave her purpose. And in the process, Kathleen rediscovered herself. The woman who had once been defined by someone else's name, someone else's choices, was now known for her own. She began painting again, something she hadn't done since college. Her artwork, filled with emotion and resilience, was soon featured in local galleries. Proceeds from her pieces went straight into the foundation, funding scholarships and job training programs for women seeking a second chance. She also began mentoring survivors one-on-one, creating a network of women who supported each other, referred resources, and built businesses together. She didn't just want to rescue women, she wanted to empower them. Kathleen learned that healing didn't come from erasing the past, it came from using it as a foundation to build something stronger. Her Malibu home, once a symbol of escape, became a place of gathering, of strategy, of sisterhood. Board meetings, donor events, brainstorming sessions, all infused with laughter, honesty, and the unspoken understanding that every woman in that room had once been underestimated. Tom's betrayal had once threatened to destroy her, but in its wake, she'd created something unstoppable. Her story was no longer about what she lost. It was about what she built. At a charity gala hosted by her foundation, Kathleen stood beside a widowed investor named James, both sipping champagne and watching women who had once been trapped in silence now flourish with purpose. As laughter filled the room, James leaned closer and asked about the origin of her journey. Kathleen smiled, thinking back to that photo album, once filled with memories, now transformed into something entirely different. "I donated it," she said, her voice light, "to a museum exhibit on financial abuse. It sits in a glass case, open to the page where I hid the lottery letter. There's a plaque beneath it that reads, 'Sometimes the strongest chains are the ones we think we can't break.'" James raised his glass in admiration, and Kathleen felt a familiar warmth, not of romance, but of recognition. She wasn't alone anymore, and she wasn't just a survivor. She was a builder, a leader, and a voice for women who hadn't yet found their own. She turned toward the stage, where one of the women she'd mentored was preparing to speak. A lump rose in her throat, not of sadness, but of pride. Kathleen's story had become a catalyst, one that reached far beyond a broken marriage or a betrayal. Tom thought their anniversary would mark the end of her life as she knew it. He was right, but not in the way he expected. It was the end of a lie and the beginning of something real, something hers, something powerful.